Hey guys, this is AI Gaming 1776 and we are doing a brief demonstration of Alien Isolation on PC. I am using a GTX 960. This is a 2 gigabyte card from PNY. I think it's called the XLR8. I ought to know this by now. And to be honest with you, I'm a little bit surprised because the game does not look too much better than it did when I used the GTX 745. And as some of you may know, a GTX 745 is not a very strong card. I have VSync off right now. That's why we have the screen tearing. The screen tearing is actually pretty bad. But I did that to see if maybe the higher frame rate helps a little bit, and it seems to. The image quality seems to be a little less dull when I have the VSync off. Let's turn it back on. It pretty much keeps 60 frames per second. It flickers a little bit between 59 and 60. See, you get a nice, strong image quality. Of course, when you look here and it's reflecting off the floor. Oh, her foot went in the floor. When you look here and it reflects off the floor, that looks bright. Her foot keeps going in the floor. That's so weird. That looks bright, but when you look around here, it looks a little bit dull. It's probably because they're trying to go for the aesthetic of the movie. But I wonder if we turn the film grain down, if it will still look dull. So let's turn it all the way down and see what happens. So basically, I'm going to check here in a second. I think I have the game maxed out. It's still dull, and it almost feels like there's screen tearing when I move quickly. I don't think it's really screen tearing, but it's just odd. It's just odd when I move the camera quickly. But it could be my monitor. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you guys see anything that looks off, that might look like screen tearing, because it's like there's flickering or something, and maybe that's an aesthetic from the game. I actually have never played this game all the way through. It's one of those things where I just haven't had the time. For example, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain comes out today, and I've been playing The Witcher 3 before that, and Grand Theft Auto 5 before that. And, you know, this is one of those games that I feel like I would like to play when there's not a lot going on game-wise. And honestly, if Grand Theft Auto 5 and The Witcher 3 hadn't come out, I think I would have played it. But those games are very time-consuming. I'm going back in here because one of the cool things, they have all, like this, how do you say, the environmental things that they decided to do in this game, lots of detail. So if you look here, it's kind of scuffed up on that, almost looks like fiberglass pod. And then the floor has buff marks in it. See, I actually grew up in the 80s, and floors would look like that. And, you know, the Alien movie was made in the 70s. So it's just interesting that it looks like that, because I don't know if it was the buffers that they used back then or like the paste they would put on the floor to buff a floor. But a floor would be shiny, and yet at the same time it would have swirl marks in it. And I'm not that old, all right? I'm like in my early 30s, but I still was alive in the 80s, and a lot of places that I would go into, like hospitals or whatever, I remember the floors looking like this. So, and then they have books and magazines laying around and a decent amount of clutter. So, looks pretty nice. Remember, I have the film grain off right now. We're keeping the 60 frames per second with no trouble. Let me make sure the graphics are maxed out. I think they are. Like, I'm almost positive because I just maxed them out. So we're at 1080p, full screen, deep color is on, vertical sync is on, level of detail ultra. That's as high as shadow map resolution goes at 2048. Shadow mapping, ultra, particles, ultra. Oh, no, motion blur, I don't do that. That's off. Depth of field on, chromatic aberration on, planar reflections on, SSAO is on standard. I don't know if HDAO is higher or not, because standard is the one that's all the way to the right. Anisotropic filtering is times 16. Volumetric lighting is on. Anti-aliasing, you know what? The all the way to the right question is an interesting one, because I would assume SMAA T2X is going to be higher than 1X, right? But 1x is what's all the way to the right. So let's change that to HDAO and see how that affects the graphics, if it does at all. I don't know if this had an effect or not. I feel like it did, but normally I would put a lot more analysis into it before I would say that. Either way, both options keep 60 frames per second. So what I'm going to do is, how do you run? Not sure how to run. I guess I'll walk slowly. We're still in our pajamas, but you can still talk to people in your pajamas. So we're going to go talk to the little android in here. Oh, and look at this. Here, let me turn the film grain back on so you get the full effect. Options, go to video and film grain. Turn that all the way up. Tell it yes. Yeah, I think I liked it better without the film grain. It felt brighter. Although it's very, the game's atmospheric. I mean, I think most of you know this by now. They did a really, look at that, the lighting. They did a really good job with making this an atmospheric game. All right, is this the hallway that you, yeah, look at this. Look at this. See the lighting and the smoke and all that? Very nice, very pretty, very sharp. You do not get lighting in here, but you do get smoke. And look how nice. One of the things I like about this game is it does not necessarily look obviously like a video game in some areas. Like in this area right here with these pipes on the wall, they don't necessarily look like polygons. I mean, do they look 100% realistic like a pipe? Maybe, maybe not. But they don't scream video game, if that makes sense. So I've always thought that's pretty nice. Actually, this one has lighting on it. Look at that. So yeah, we're keeping 60 frames per second. The GTX 745 kept 60 frames per second too. Not quite maxed out, but it did keep 60 frames per second. So here's the Android. Get all up in his face. Oh look, he's trying to track me. All right, see you later, Android. Not sure if I can run or not. I'm basically hitting the buttons on the controller. I don't know if I can run. Like I said, I never played through the game. There's a lot going on. Oh, I always like this little section right here with that light right there and the glow coming off of it and the glow coming off the buttons. Just very delightful and nice and atmospheric. It's interesting that this light turned on when I came in, as if she was going to be sitting in here in the dark. Hi, I don't have my clothes on. And sometimes my foot goes in the floor, although it's not going in the floor now. Lots of nice touches. Almost looks like cheap leather 1970s fake leather vinyl seating, almost. And in the 70s, brown was used a lot. Like brown was a popular color. Matter of fact, I have a brown car from the early 80s. And I saw a similar model that was also brown from the 70s. My neighbor had one, actually. All right, so this is the first opening level. And let me see if I quit. Ooh, wait a minute. No. Can I load my game? Wait a minute. No, cancel. Huh, load current save, load. Okay, so it's possible. Nope, there's mission 2. There we go. See, I had to save halfway through the next mission. Once you, not to give you a spoiler or anything, but you do go to another location. It's not the location we were just at. You know, just to not give you a spoiler, I'll say it is a differing location. So let us see how this looks. Still 60 frames per second. Should be fine. And again, I think we're maxed out. Nice lighting. Look at that. Nice lighting. Yeah, once Metal Gear Solid 5 comes out, I don't know what I'm going to... Well, it comes out today. And interestingly enough, you couldn't preload it on PC. So I'm going to have to download it in a couple hours. Where do I go? I should have to do some kind of decompression thing, and I've done this before. Oh, how about you go to where the big green light is? Maybe you could try to understand level design. See, I wasn't thinking about this thing. I was thinking about like a valve or something that I would have to turn to handle compression, decompression, what have you. So, oh, look. Oh, it lets you run here. That's right. It lets you run here. All right, so look at the smoke. Look at the lighting. Look at the shaking. Here goes light plus smoke. So light going through smoke. Fire. All looking very pretty. Keeping our 60 frames per second. And then there's like, I don't know, a garbage chute that I could climb into. And is there a jump button? I'm hitting all the buttons. I'm not jumping. All right, fair enough. Yeah, I think I have to climb into that hole. The camera movement by default, a little bit slow, a little bit wonky. Yeah, I have to go into this hole. I would love to jump across this or even into it. Even if it killed me, I still would like to jump into it to see what it looks like. Look how good that lighting is. Yeah, I mean, this game, I'm recording this in basically September of 2015. So at the time of this recording, everybody knows that this is a very atmospheric game. Looks pretty good. Let's turn brightness down a little bit. Hopefully it hasn't been too bright all along. Interesting. Oh, that's field of view. Gamma's up here. All right. A little bit darker. There we go. Very convenient that there are lights hanging here. Then you have the cliche fan spinning with the light and the shadow. Looks good though. Not the best looking fan with light and shadow that I've ever seen, but it still looks good. Not the best looking red light I've ever seen. However, going back to what I said about how parts of this game don't just scream, look at me, I'm a polygon. Look how this door opens when I scooch to the right. Look at this. Look at that. That door right there. That's very clever. I mean, that looks almost like a real thing. Hello, fire. Can't go into the fire. Won't let me. You would think just being like here would kill me. For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be like your lungs are burning or something at that point. But all right, fair enough. Maybe make it a little bit darker still. There we go. That's a little bit better. Oh, go back to the fire with it darker. See, there we go. Better contrast. See, we went into that hole over there by that orange cone. Then we went through the tubing. Not like anyone cares, but that's what we did. Employees only. I'm not an employee, and yet here I go through here. Uh-oh. Oh, boy. See, if I had a jump button, I wouldn't have to go through this now, would I? Oh, yeah, the lighting in here is pretty good. You cannot climb up out of this. Obviously, I mean, the game threw you down here, so they don't want you to go back. Yeah, we're stuck. Lots of good lighting through here. Interesting lighting anyway. Very artistic game. Let me try the other anti-aliasing. Because I know that I did an option before that made this conveyor belt section look a little bit shinier. Oh, was it? Well, what was it that did it? Is it? You wouldn't think that T times 1 would be stronger. You'd think T times 2 would be stronger. I mean, either way, this looks good. Like I said, I've never really played this game all the way through, but I am giving you guys the general idea that it does play well with the GTX 960. I'm just going to keep going so I don't waste any more of your time, but I was going to try turning VSync off and see if the frame rate even gets affected when I go between the times 1 and times 2. Because normally times 2 is going to be stronger. But again, times 1 is the option that's all the way to the right. Actually, let's do the VSync. Let's go all the way to the right with that too. All right. Aw, and I did it wrong. There we go. So we're at 106, 102, 100 just standing still. And then it screams up to 120 when you get close to here. Look at that. That's interesting. All right, for sake of argument, 102 to 120. So let's change it. This graphics card buzzes a lot, by the way. Does not sound very good with the buzzing. Not a fan. All right, so we were at 102. See, I was right. The options all the way to the right are not the max settings. It's so weird. The T times 2 and the HDAO are the max settings. Because look, now we're at 88 frames per second. 120 when you get up on there anyway. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. By the time I post this, though, and by the time you comment, I will probably have already Googled it. But you know what? Let me know anyway. Nothing wrong with some good discussion. Frame rate up in the 120s, presumably with the game maxed out. So what I'm going to do is when I get up here, I'm going to end it. Point being, the GTX 960 runs this incredibly well. And if you have a high refresh rate monitor, or heck, even if for some reason you came to this video and you've got a laptop screen that's got like 75 frames per second or something, then you should see some benefit even there. But obviously you're not going to have a GTX 960 in a laptop, but you could have a mobile processor that's on par with it. I don't know. You'd be surprised. I've had guys, for whatever reason, they have GTX 970s and they stop by and comment on my GTX 745 videos. They don't have a 745, so you never know why someone's going to come and find your video. Anyway, please excuse the chattiness. I've just been a little bit chatty, waiting on Metal Gear Solid 5, several cups of coffee, waiting to download and install that game. But there you go. GTX 960 totally handles this game. GTX 745 does too, for that matter, but this handles it at about 120 frames per second in some spots. So this has been AI Gaming 1776. Hopefully this video is helpful for you guys, and y'all have yourselves a good night.